we are ready. We start. I'm so glad you returned to the program, because in the first program we didn't go too far in your activity, in your research actually. So today I'd like to discuss about ways in which personal responsibility as far as health-related decisions is concerned, and social structures, systems, culture, and values interact with each other. You did lots of research on that, yeah? Where did you do this research, and in what ways one research led to the next and to the next? Because in a way, your research was done in apparently unrelated fields, but there are some connections, some unseen connections.
Yes, yes. So I think one of the key reasons why it may seem different, but they're really the same, is because, first of all, health behavior and health behavior change is a personal, very personal thing, especially in chronic illnesses. And it's also a very, very complex issue. You know, people will make a choice, according to one model that I've used quite frequently in my studies, and that's a health belief model, where people will make a choice to change depending on their perceived risk for or susceptibility to an illness, whether or not they believe that making that change will be helpful to them, or finally, if they have the efficacy, the self-efficacy that can do, that resilience that is necessary to make that change and then sustain it. A lot of times you have people who do not make health decisions because make the health change decisions, because they just feel like, okay, I cannot sustain what it will take to lose weight and keep it off. And so I'll just sit here and remain in my situation.
It's worthless, the effort and the pain, and
it's not worth it, right? And so that's one of the key things. And throughout my work, what I have tried to do is contribute the voice of the individual. So I have done a lot of qualitative studies where I am speaking with those who are living with the issues and those who are at high risk for these issues, and hearing what are those barriers to the change that needs to occur. I recall one study that I have done was from a social injustice perspective, where I was trying to understand why is it that African American women who are less likely to be diagnosed with a breast cancer, for example, but most likely to die from it when compared to their Caucasian counterparts. Why was that reason? Why was that outcome what it is? And as I got into it and began talking with these women, what the hook of that study was, the government has created, back then the government had in place a program where if you are under 250% of the poverty level, the federal poverty level, and you're diagnosed with this with breast cancer, that you are allowed free care. And so what we found in the public health department was these women would go, and they would go to their doctor as part of their screening, because part of that health behavior, health education is annual screening. So they would go in and they would have this positive screen, and they would not return for treatment. And I really wanted to understand why. Why wouldn't you go back? Because it's free. You, based on the criteria of 250% federal, below the federal poverty level, you will be able to get your second screening, diagnostic screenings done. And if that is positive, your treatment, you will have access to the social workers. You have a whole patient navigation system in place.
Excuse me, at that time, these women were aware of the fact that the second screening and then the treatment were available to them
They were
free.
aware.
They were aware.
They were aware.
Wow.
They
and
were
they
aware.
still didn't
And
return.
they did not return. And when you get in there, getting into this whole complex issues where it was because of institutionalized racism, this perception, and also their lived experience, that I am going to go in and see a doctor who does not look like me, speak like me, and the power of authority is such that they speak down to me. They do not speak in a way that makes me feel as if I'm human. Because I am poor and I am African American, then I'm treated differently than my white counterpart.
It's very, very disturbing because you have a life and death
It
situation.
is a life and death.
And you know that treatment is available and it's free. You have no worries about the treatment. Probably an economic aspect is still, because if you begin the treatment, you will not be able to continue with your job. And
Exactly. That was part of the
that
story.
was part of the story.
Yes. So some of these women were seasonal employees, and even to take time off from their job puts the job at risk. To take time off from their job to go and have a follow-up test took time away from work. They lost money. Their families now become more financially have less money to take care of their children, and that was part of the issue.
A few months or years down the road,
yes, yes,
you will be in a situation that you will be not able to do anything from the family.
Exactly.
So that's very, to me it's very troublesome, because it's not only your personal life and death.
Yes.
It's also a very disruptive situation for the family.
Yes.
And the power of
Yes.
those perceived, as you said, racial disadvantages
Right.
is so strong that it precludes, or
stops them from moving forward with the
yes.
treatment. And this is where the complexity comes in, because they were, over so many years, have been felt so disenfranchised by the system, so lost in it. They've watched their grandmothers and their mother's mother go through these illnesses and have not been treated well in the health system, or their provider communication was not one that was positive in that first go around, that they're like, I'm not going back. And and it's very sad, because another aspect of it was that they believed that God was going to intervene from them.
So there is a strong religious component
So
into that. Speak more on that,
Yes.
because we know that health conditions, or diagnosis or things like that, these are one of the most critical times in our lives when we seek God.
Yes.
For people who used to have a connection with God, is natural to do that. for people who neglected their communication with God, is a time when many of them return to God one way or another.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
so important to have a solid Bible-based understanding of God's attitude toward human illness,
Yes.
and what is right to expect, and how to put together faith in
Yes.
God, relying on God on one hand, on the other hand,
Yes.
doing the right
Trusting.
thing.
Right,
Doing the right
yes.
thing, yeah.
Doing the right thing. And
So speak more on the religious component.
yes, so I found in the study that these women, they wanted to live. They wanted to live for their children. They wanted to have a different circumstance than they saw their mother
It's important you
experience.
say that, because hearing the first part of your presentation, I was thinking, is that helplessness?
Yeah.
Is that a kind of giving up? Is that sense of futility of any? But you say no, they want to live, they want to fight,
Yes.
but
Yes.
still
Yes.
not doing it.
Yes.
And here comes
Yes.
the religious component.
Yes, and so they do want to live. However, over so many years, going back to this concept of the weathering effect, that I've had to fight for so long, because infrastructurally, environmentally, from a policy perspective, you have not been there for me. My dependence on God is where I have found my strength. And so if I come and see you as my provider and you choose not to speak to me well, then I am going to go home and I am going to spend time with God and in my faith community, and we're going to find a way of healing to get through
Without
this
you,
situation.
without the system,
Without the system, because you have so many years created these, put things in place to stop me, that I no longer trust you to want to be a part of this care that you're offering me.
Now, you are also a believer, you're also a
Yes.
person of prayer.
Yes.
What is
Yes.
your position?
Yes.
Do you think prayer and medical intervention are
Yes.
mutually exclusive? We have to choose one or another?
No,
No.
they're not. No, they're
No.
not. They're not mutually exclusive at all. They actually, the intersectionality of them is just not at one point. It is totally integrated and a part of each other. Because if you trust God, then you also understand that he is such a good God, that he's interested in every bits and piece of you, that if he places a provider, clinical provider in front of you to tell you something, then they are, of course, guided by him. That is how you want to approach it. Now, I do understand, and the literature is out there that shows that, and even in my own experience as an educated woman, having gone to see a provider, I have been spoken into in such a way that essentially you're saying to me that I have no hope because of my background and the fact that I am a woman of color, and my illness is is one that women of color are predisposed to. So there is an element there where our patient provider, where the healthcare system is not acculturated enough to provide information to me as a woman of color, or understand where is it that I come from, and you're considering my values, my hopes, and introducing your guidance to me in such a way that it reaches me, that I understand it. So if you have a provider that begins with a prayer, or begins to talk with you about, this is how I think God would want you to, you reach them at a different level than if you just come in and you use these clinical terminology, and I walk out, I don't understand what it is that you say. 1, 2, I did not go with a family member. mentally you receive such a diagnosis that these women, it pushes you into, this is terminal. You're now confused and you cannot process that information that you receive. And if I go in on my own because my mother or my sister or my husband could not come with me because they have to work, so I go on my own and you speak to me in terms that I don't understand, then I am not going to return to you. Because even if you say, okay, now you need to have a diagnostic test done and you will need to go and see this doctor and it's on this floor in the hospital, or here is the directions, you have not said to me, take hope. Be hopeful, everything is going to be all right. I've done this before. You know, that's the kind of engagement that these women were looking for, and they did not seem to get that from their provider.
Shelly, you speak about a big percentage of women in this situation not returning. We speak, I mean, every 1% is very much.
It's too much.
It's
Exactly.
too much. One
Exactly.
case is too much.
Too many.
But now, speaking statistically, we speak as important of large numbers.
So it's not that my study was 16 women of a large number. And I don't remember what my total number of potential was, because, you know, based on eligibility criteria. But these were 16 women that sat down with me and spoke with me about their experiences.
I have another question on the method. Was it a longitudinal study? You followed these women for a significant period of time, or it was just one encounter?
One encounter. It was a cross-sectional study
so
that
you don't
I did.
know what happened later?
Right. I did not get to follow them over time, but I already knew their history in terms of where they, by that time, how long they've been diagnosed. And I had a woman who was 8 months post-diagnosis.
8 months.
Yes, and that's a lot of time for not having a clinical intervention, you know, being done.
It can change the situation a lot.
It changes the outcome a whole lot. But this is part of my work over the years of these, trying to help to put a voice to the social injustices that are essentially saying it's not allowable that a woman or anyone at all, because of their poverty, their social economic status or their educational background, that their outcomes or what is available to them for treatment or any kind of intervention is not at the same level as someone else, another group, right? So in this case, African American women having the same access as someone who is white. And this institutionalized sort of challenges that are out there contributes to the mindset that individuals will have in terms of who do they trust, whose voices do they want to hear when there is a challenging situation for them to respond to.
When did you do this research?
So that work I completed was during my fellowship, so around 2008.
So more than 10 years ago.
So more than 10 years ago, yes, yeah.
Have any idea if, of course, changes in level?
Slow.
Very slow,
Yes.
very slow.
Yes. So more work I've done since then. Still have not focused on at this level, but at this policy level, and providing this feedback about the changes that need to be done to increase access to care, to increase the communication, advising individuals how it is that you want to be able to communicate with people, a person in authority, in this case your providers. Some of that recommendation include writing a list of what is it you want to talk to the doctor about, not going by yourself when you go in
so
and see
we
them.
move now a little to a little different level. You speak now on the to the persons.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So yeah.
But institutionally,
yeah. No.
yes.
It's good. It's good because most of our viewers don't work in public health. They are
Right.
not policymakers and things like that.
Yes,
Most
yes,
of them
yes.
are
Individuals.
with
Yes,
their
going
own
on.
situations.
Yeah.
So you began giving some very down-to-earth advice on
Right.
how to prepare
Right.
for a visit to the doctor and
Yes.
how to get most of it and
Yes.
don't realize, when it is too late. Oh, I had the opportunity, I had the possibility, but for some reasons I lost
Right.
them.
Right.
I wasted
Wasted.
them. So
Yes.
let's say something practical, helpful for our viewers.
Yes, I mean, it's important, as I was saying, that in these cases, for any health issue
Yes.
at all, where you have to go and you have to interact with your providers, first of all, do not feel as if you do not have a voice. And that is a lot of times over time, you see someone in their white coats and they speak with such levels of education and authority that you tend to have this paternalistic, because most times our providers are male, so a paternalistic approach to interaction. Part of the ways to overcome that is, if you know you're going in to see your provider, have a list of what it is that you want to talk to them about. What are those aches? What are those issues that you've been experiencing that you know you want to get some guidance from them, and write it down.
Many times we go out and, I should have asked this, I should ask that, but you can't return and I have more questions. It's gone.
It's gone. So, it's a 15 minutes. And so you have that list and you talk with them about what it is that, and hear from them. And if it requires a follow-up visit, hopefully they may be able to have a follow-up visit with you at another date that addresses all your concern. In cases where there is a devastating news that you're a diagnosis or take someone with you to go, because you will not be able to hear and or process what that information
your mind will
is.
be stuck on the news and not what to do.
You hear nothing else, because all of a sudden you see your life going topsy-turvy and no longer the way you had planned to even make dinner that afternoon for your family. So bring someone with you when in these cases. And that was some of the conversation and recommendations that came out of some of the work.
So moving a little further, that was specifically for the visit. After the visit, what would you like to say to persons with a diagnosis?
Okay, so first of all, you want to begin to feel that you have the capacity to make the changes that will be required. Let's say it's any diagnosis for that matter, hypertension, chronic illnesses is where I see a lot of some of the work that I have done in more recent years, particularly around diabetes. And my practical recommendation in what I have seen in the work, because individuals, chronic diseases such as diabetes are lifestyle diseases. How you eat, whether or not you exercise, go to bed on time, those things predisposes you to diabetes, and you may have prediabetes. You want to feel as if you have the capacity to make the change that you need to change. Okay, so I get it, that you may live in a community where there is not a good walkability for you to go out and exercise. You may not have a gym to go out and work out at. It may not be part of your schedule. However, you have to, at some point, make that choice. Do what you can to say, okay, I may not be able to walk on the street because it's not safe. However, there's a school somewhere in my neighborhood that usually has a field. I just need to go and walk around it, get a couple of friends or your children to go walk with you, to get that physical activity in, because it's reversible. You do not have to have diabetes because your grandmother had it and your mother had it, and it's just something that has been passed down from generation, and you saw where they've lived with it and they may have lost a limb via amputation, that okay, you see that as a forecast in your own life that
It's
I
not
am
true.
good.
That's
It does
not
not.
true.
It is not true. It is not true. There are ways that you can change your diet and try to get some physical activity, and that you may want to explore those ways to make that change and get your health back. Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the most terrible barriers to changes is this feeling that no matter what I do,
Things remain the
yeah,
same.
it will be the same.
Yes.
Or I've been doing these wrong things for such a long time. It's too late now. Or I've tried and it didn't work. I was able to get rid of this or that for a short time, but then I took it over. I lost some pounds, but then I put back more than I had, and things like that.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
these self-defeating messages, this sense of helplessness,
Yes,
of futility.
Yes. It spells disaster.
Yeah.
And it may not be as dramatic as you may think, because, okay, it's when you feel like when you're older and your age, everybody in your age group is talking about their high blood pressure and their insulin, and it becomes such a part of my culture. But it's really a disastrous way to think, because it impacts other decisions. And I'll talk a little bit about another study that I was part of the team. I wasn't the lead PI, investigator on this study, but this same mentality of I've lived with it, I've done this, and this is what it is, contributed to individuals who were exposed to Katrina, this major hurricane that hit Louisiana over a decade ago. We looked at individuals that did not evacuate at the time that they were told that they needed to leave. Mind you, there were issues of communication from the governor's level, from a national level, in terms of what guidance that came out to people to get out. However, there was this individual mentality where individuals were like, well, I've lived through other storms. This isn't going to be bad. It's not going to be that bad. And I have gone through this, and it's the same sort of a thinking that I'm just going to sit back and let it come, and it's going to be what it is, and I'm going to be fine when I get back out of it. Well, it wasn't what it was. A lot of people died. A lot of people got separated from their families, their children. Their properties got destroyed, and they had to be bussed out or airlifted out, or they ended up being evacuated to these large convention centers, and it was not a positive, it was not a great, it was a disastrous experience for many of these individuals. And
excuse me, and many of them also got ill due to lack of pure water. And,
yes, many got ill, many got exposed to bacteria, and so there were, another viruses that created a lot of illness.
This is what happens. Waste gets spread.
Oh my goodness!
Water is polluted.
Everything.
Sewage
system broke open, everything, and people were on top of their roofs, and still water was, and for days they were exposed to and living like that.
So have you been able to find a pattern, those who didn't follow orders to evacuate were part mainly of a certain social, economic,
yes.
racial, or did
Yes.
you find a pattern?
Yes.
What was that
Similarly,
pattern?
yes.
Similarly.
Yes, there was that pattern
That's
of
interesting because
Yes.
apparently there is no connection between responding to a cancer verdict and an evacuation order.
disaster. Yes. Yes.
Apparently they are two different things.
Yes.
But
And what you
really
find
is the
Yeah.
go
The
ahead.
common denominator here is that these are disenfranchised individuals that were that we saw in our study that were below the federal poverty levels. Again, once again, the institutionalized racism, these infrastructures that were in place that did not support them for years, and they felt they couldn't trust the voices that were out there because I have had to fight these issues for so many years on my own that you're going to tell me to leave.
No, but you didn't care for me when
Yes.
years and years and years. Now I'm not going to
Yes.
follow your orders.
Yes, because I have managed to acquire a little property here. And now
Yeah.
you're asking me to leave my little property here when I have worked so hard to get it. And they talked
Who is
about
going to
this
take care
instead.
of it?
Who is going to take care of it? Who is going to
Looters
take
and-
care of me?
yeah.
Where are you sending me to when you evacuate me? I feel like you are doing this to get me out of here, kind of a thing. Because, you know, even some of them, they had vehicles to get out, but they had no money to get gas, petrol to put in the car to get out. And by the time some of them heard the final news to get out, it was too late. The storm had already hit, the highways were backed up, and okay, I'm just going to sit here and ride this out. And now in retrospect, they say, I think this is what you wanted to happen. You wanted me to, you gave me mixed messages about when to leave or it's not going to be so bad. And so
Now,
you
as you
wanted me
said,
to
and I didn't, study the reports. There are some failures. There are some problems, but
Yes.
even so,
Infrastructure, yes.
many people followed the orders
Yes.
and were saved.
And
or-
yes, yes, many people then, so the families kept kept together, because one of the fallout of this situation was a separation of family, and there is no home, and there was not a proper documentation of who was being sent where, and so they later on had no opportunities to get back to where they. But going back to this health belief, where my perceived my perceived susceptibility to this disaster is one that I think I'm going to be fine, and so I'm not going to make a change at all, or I think this is going to be disastrous, but I do not have the capacity or the capabilities to change the situation, left them in a state of, almost a fatalistic sort of,
Yeah.
of thinking.
And speaking about response to cancer, you also mentioned the religious dimension. It could have played a role
Yes.
here as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Faith, the religious, I mean, within these populations, all this that I have
I
studied,
think we are part of the Bible Belt.
we are in the Bible Belt of especially where I've studied, done all
Yes,
my
yes,
studies,
yes,
and
yes,
so
yes.
faith and the religiosity are huge aspects of how I think and speak and interact in everything that I do. And there's a large dependence on God to save me, even when I am not doing what it is that I am to do to save myself.
To make things clear, are you against religiosity?
I am absolutely not against religiosity. For me personally, my goodness, the intersection, that integration of faith and God, and a sense of belief in God and what He has the capacity to do for us is so strengthened over all these years in my own faith that I know that He is present and on time for anything that I am going through or having to deal with. However, I also know that He requires of me to do certain things, to make choices that are important to my health, and because if I choose to eat candy all the time, then the consequences of that is cavity, right?
One of the consequences.
One of one of them is cavities, and so I can call upon Him when I am in terrible pain. But He did require of me not to eat so much, to make a choice not to eat so much.
Yeah.
And that's so totally oversimplifying a very complex issue for a population that has just been so challenged for many years within this country.
So we should read the Bible and develop a prayer life in a way that enhances our responsibility,
Yes.
not
Yes.
replace,
Yes.
not supplants our responsibility.
Yes. That is the way. There's no other. You said it well. There is no other way to go about that. You spend time with God, and you ask Him, and He will direct you in where you're to go, and what decisions that you are to make. But there is this portion of ownership that we need to take, that when we go to Him, we say, "Dear God, I really want a better quality of life. Could you help me to do this or to do that, or direct me?" And when we get that directions, we have that responsibility to move forward and do what He's asking us to do.
Yeah. It's sad to say that, but I think sometimes we develop a kind of infantilistic approach to God.
Yes.
We'd like, at least this is what we say, we'd like to be guided like, a parent guides a child, and, a very small child, this way, that way, stop, go. And we'd like to have something like that. At least we say so, but when it happens, we are not so sure we like it. But God wants us to grow.
Yes.
To live a fuller life.
Yes.
To be to look at us at His eye level, not like that.
Yes, I think Paul says it best. When I was a child, I spake as a child.
Yes.
Now I am, I do different things as a man.
I left behind what was childish.
Yes, and God, when He meets us, when we meet God, because He's always there, when we finally engage with Him, He meets us where we are. And it is His goal that we grow and our experiences strengthen that faith muscle, such that over time we can offer that to others who are, be a witness to others who have similar experiences. So if you're out there and you're not making those choices that you feel that you can do something on your own, it calls for a level of self-reflection. Am I just giving up? Am I just being fatalistic about my situation and just taking things for what they are? Or is there an opportunity for me to do something differently and step out in that faith to eat differently, to choose to eat something healthy, as say, it may not be as accessible as I would like it to be, but here's a choice I'm going to make an effort to do that. God meets us there.
Yeah. I don't know, I mean, that was one research you have been involved in. I don't think you have the time and to pour upon every new disaster, and there are plenty of them here in the
Oh my
States. You can't
goodness,
research
yes. Yes.
every situation.
Yes.
But
yes.
maybe I'd like to ask you, your research was here in the South, where people have a certain mindset and certain approach to religiosity. Let's go to a different region in the northern part of the States, where people are much less religious, and they tend to be more rationalistic and humanistic and things like that. Do you think their response to the disasters they had in their regions was different due to that, or for different reasons, with different explanations or motivations? It's more or less the same.
It's more or less the same, because what we found built on other studies that were done in other places. And part of it goes back to, of course, there's this religiosity, but that's just one small construct in a larger, more complex issue of what is it that systematically is in place for me to make a choice to leave. Do I have enough money? Where will I go? Who do I stay with? When I get back, who's going to help me rebuild? Maybe if I stay where I am, let's say it's a storm, I can, get rid of some of the water while it's coming in, as opposed to I leave, I can't get back in, the property sits underwater, and it's going to be even worse for me financially. So economically, especially, that's where a lot of people's thinking come from. When you think about, what do I do, or how do I respond in this situation?
And also thinking on the post-disaster situation.
Exactly.
Because there are some areas which are exposed, very exposed. You have heavy rains, you have storms, and again the same places, they get flooded and evacuations and things like that. And for many years, I've asked myself, why do they return in the same place? Why do they go in the mouth of the dragon there? Why? It seemed to me like, if you wish, you can go anywhere. Now, as an adult, I understand it's not that easy. It's not that easy. But I still think that we could do better. It could be that, again, we deal with psychological issues, with worldviews and culture, when we tend to return to the same place and start all over again a couple of years down the road, rather than taking a bolder decision and find a place which is better protected. And what do you think about that? It's personal and it's social. Societal.
Yes, it's difficult because we tend to want to be where we're comfortable as part of that. But also growing up in Jamaica, there's only that many square miles. And we are so predisposed to hurricanes and storms. That I wondered the same as a child. Like, why would you go back and build your house right there on the mountain? We lost our home in one hurricane. Yes.
So you've been through that.
And so yes, I've been through that. Now our family did leave the home, but did evacuate. But when we got back, there was there was nothing. My childhood pictures and all of that are all gone, got lost in that. Did we have a new place to go and rebuild? No. However, we had to choose to rebuild in a different kind of way. For example, the roof of the house has been redesigned based on the best technology and knowledge out there, such that in recent years, after these heavy storms, we've not had such a devastating experience again. So I do understand why is it that you would choose to go back. and build right back where it is. Because now, as an adult, I realize we didn't have a choice. What are we going to do? Sell the property? I mean, to whom? Exactly. And we would need to get it sold to move somewhere else, right?
And what do you do in the meantime? It could take years to...
To make that transformation and that change. And so I do sympathize and I do understand. I think this is why, you go back you cannot have these discussions without considering what are the social aspects that individuals have no control. Well, of course, emotional there too, but there are social elements that you have no control over. And this is where, as an individual, you want to, where possible, have your voice be heard about having more access to certain things that will make things a little bit better for you and your environment. Because let's take, for example, you live in a community and you're renting from someone, but the homes are old and they're not built properly, or should a storm come, then it blows it all over. At some point, someone needs to hold that landlord accountable to making sure that the infrastructure is appropriate for someone to live in and live through these disasters.
Says a lot about the tragedy of human existence on a sin-dominated planet. And,
yes.
As a researcher and an advisor to important bodies making decisions, do you have a sense of your research and your recommendations are well heard and taken into consideration, or sometimes you feel they are put on a shelf and nobody takes pays any attention? How do you feel about
it's
that?
Both. It's both. Being in the applied field and in this translation, I get to say it over and over. I do see where the uptake of the information, thankfully I feel as if it's been heard. Of course, change is slow. Change is very, very slow. One of the things I am exploring right now is, we do have this standardized approach sometimes that is taken to development of interventions or how we interact with individuals. And what I have seen, or what I am seeing at a very high level right now, I've just started digging into it, is these models are not thoughtful of the culture of the individuals that they're trying to reach. And so my hypothesis is if you are considerate of this, then the reach of your intervention will be further and deeper to those that you're really trying to influence when it comes to, and we'll see better outcomes when we think about these inequities. So I feel, where I am right now in my career, having this opportunity to have these conversations and being part of these larger bodies that are thinking about these issues, that hopefully we'll see some transformation over time. Because unfortunately, it does take time. It takes multiple studies. It takes multiple research for someone to buy into this
unfortunately,
idea.
multiple storms.
And unfortunately, multiple storms.
Working in this field and meeting people, interviewing people, having conversations with policymakers and things like that, very diverse interaction kind of. And did it increase or strengthen your admiration for humans, for their resilience, wisdom, strength, faith, or made you more pessimistic?
No, Yes, an increased admiration for human resilience. If you can imagine, what I've been exposed to is people who have seen generations, and historically, this is what I've been through. And here I am today trying to make a difference and being part of the process of making a difference. So a huge admiration that, so my father wasn't literate, or my grandfather wasn't literate, but here I am. I do have a different level of literacy, and I can use that to make a more strategic decision and create the change. That's the kind of conversations I've been exposed to over this time. So extremely extreme amount of admiration for people who have gone through so much and are just committed to making multiple differences over time.
I'd like to hope that the same resilience and energy and boldness would manifest also in a field where we are not so much, or we shouldn't be so much conditioned by social and structural and infrastructural and policies and things like it would be our own salvation.
Yes.
I fear that many people have a similar response to God when He gives us. He makes it clear that it's free, it's for everyone.
Yes.
But I think we are not very quick to catch it.
To catch on. Yes.
We play the same messages. It's not for me. If it was good for my grandparents, it will be good for me. Where they go, I'm going to go as well. And I don't know too much. If my pastor if my mentor, if my priest says so, I'll follow his advice. And when we should take a more responsible stand.
Yes. There needs to be definitely more responsibility on our own. We cannot depend on, and I did hear that from some of the women as they come into the consciousness, or into individuals that I have studied over time, as they've come into this place of understanding that I cannot depend in this kind of a way on these individuals, that I need to make that choice now for things to be different and influence my own household. Even though my culture may say this, even though my environment is suggesting this is the direction that I go in, there needs to be some individual thinking that goes into the decisions that I make.
And I also think with as believers in the church, we also have a part in that, I think.
Absolutely.
Because to some people we speak with hope, and to other people we speak like, I have to tell it to you, but I don't really think you are going to do anything. So, as you said, trust cannot be bought. Trust cannot be commanded, ordered. It is or it is not, and it's based on years and decades of interactions, and but still hope that. And by the way, I also think that when we contribute to a better health, to economical improvements in people, we also build in them a sense of self-reliance, of self-determination, that it's also going to help them when they meet the most important decision of their life. How should I respond to God's offer of free salvation?
Absolutely.
If they are, down, depressed, sick, like dying. Probably they will not have the stamina, the energy, the courage to make for themselves a decision for
Yes.
salvation. But if we show them,
Yes.
if they feel
Yes.
that change is possible,
Yes.
improvement is
Yes.
possible, I
Yes.
feel it, I've done it,
Yes, yes,
I think they will be closer
yes.
to making decisions for eternity.
Absolutely. And that's part of the responsibility of the church, as you say, and our faith communities. It's not just about reading the Bible. It's that and everything else in some very practical ways of thinking. For example, I think one of the most practical things that our church offers as Adventists is the health message.
Yes, yes.
Eating a certain way and getting physical activity in, because it clears the mind, it contributes to that mind, and it offers a clarity, and you're able to receive the promises of God even in a richer, deeper way, and strengthen that faith muscle I keep talking about.
So it prepares
yes.
the way in many different ways.
Yes.
Many different.
Yes.
You're able to, I thought I was not able to do this, but I am.
Yes.
I thought it will make no
Yes.
change, but it did change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I can go further and make more life and eternity decisions.
And the beauty about having this relationship with God is His grace. His grace is there offered to all of us, and it allows you to forgive yourself. So yesterday you may not have made the healthy choice, but today okay, I've forgiven myself, I'm going to move on and do
beginning.
it. It's a new beginning, and God promises to offer us these mercies every morning. So there is this opportunity to start afresh with Him. He's not a punitive God. He's not going to punish you. He just asks you to just embrace me every day, and we'll have a different kind of outcome by the end of it.
On behalf of our viewers, I thank you very much, and I'm sure this conversation brought help and hope and courage to them and to me personally. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too. God bless you.